first place for undefeated, we have Speak to Ryan.
Hey everyone, this is Ryan from Anti-Wizard Wizard Club, and I'm going to tell you all about the deck that I took on an undefeated run at Top Cut's bi-weekly Beyblade tournament. So let's walk through the deck together. The first piece of the puzzle is Nightmail. Now, I've played Nightmail in a lot of different ways and configurations. I've done 160, 360, 760, I've done Low Rush, I've done Hexa, and all things in between. But where I've ended up on is Nightmail 660 Rush. There's a couple of key reasons why, but I'll try to keep it short and sweet. Throughout my testing with different combinations of Nightmail, I've found that with an updated launching technique, which I'll talk about in this video, as well as going from the low rush bit to the rush bit, I've avoided the pitfall that I've run into with Nightmail traditionally, which is self-KOing. While Nightmail is a defensive blade at its heart, most people typically find success with it running in a more attack-oriented combo, and I am no different. There are two reasons why I think the 660 ratchet and the rush bit are the perfect combo for Nightmail. First, regarding the ratchet, I found that Nightmail is really strong, but using an imbalanced ratchet like 160, while it does pack a little bit more of a punch in its hits, drains its stamina more than I would like. A ratchet like 660 enables Nightmail to have just that little bit extra spin power that it needs to survive on an attack versus attack battle. Alternatively, I found success with 560 and 760 as well, but 660 just feels perfectly balanced, particularly when used with the Nightmail blade. Low Rush is a perfectly viable bit as well, but I found that both angling my launch as well as the fact that Rush is a little bit longer prevents me from kind of going over that divot that's on the opposite end of the stadium of the extreme zone, which prevents me from self-KOing more often than not. Because that was a problem I was running into a lot when I was running both Low Rush and not using the launch technique that I'm using today in this tournament run. The second blade that I'm using today in this deck is Phoenix Wing. Phoenix Wing is a classic, needs no introduction. This blade is incredibly well balanced, pretty heavy, and an excellent attacker. Pairing it with the 360 ratchet and the low rush bit makes it a lean, mean attacking machine. And I found a lot of success with it. It's gotten me a huge amount of points whenever I play it. And again, with the updated launch tech that I'm going to talk about in this video, I've mitigated a lot of the risks that I initially saw when I first started using Phoenix Wing. So Phoenix Wing has been working pretty well for me, but you might be asking yourself, why not pair it with 160? Most people are finding really, really good success with 160 on one of their two attacking blades if they're running a 2 attack, 1 stamina based setup. And you wouldn't be wrong, but 160 goes on my third blade. And that third blade is Wizard Rod. Now you might be asking yourself, why are you running 160 on Rod? Why are you not running 960 ball or 360 ball or 560 ball or literally anything with ball? And here's the thing, I don't like Wizard Rod on ball. Yes, it has excellent stamina. Yes, it's a super meta pick. Yes, people find success with it very often. But the times where I've needed it to win the most, it has burst on me. Rod, ball, burst has taken me out of a single elimination top cut, not once, but twice. And I wasn't gonna have that anymore. So I found a new combo through some research and testing. This is Wizard Rod 160 Hexa. Hexa and 160 are working really well in tandem with each other on this super well balanced, very heavy Wizard Rod. One of the problems I was finding with ball is that if it didn't burst, sometimes it wouldn't be able to stay in the stadium against super aggressive attackers like Phoenix Wing or Whale Wave or Dran Buster or even another Nightmail. Having it on Hexa gives it that little bit extra defense that it needs to withstand hits that would otherwise knock it into the pocket or the extreme zone, keep it in the stadium while still maintaining excellent stamina because of, well, Wizard Rod to outspin those attackers. It is an excellent choice that I 100% do not regret. And pairing Hexa with the 160 ratchet might seem like an odd choice for a stamina sort of balanced outlasting type combo, but what I've found is that the slight imbalance that 160 gives, along with the somewhat erratic movements of Hexa, all combined with the stable and high stamina of Wizard Rod, equal to this weird equation where sometimes I can get really strong aggressive hits on attackers or make defensive combos like Silver Wolf or even another Wizard Rod on ball lose their footing a little bit and still maintain enough stamina to beat any attacker as long as I don't get pocketed or extremed. Plus, the burst resistance from Hexa prevents any of those nasty bursts that I've seen before from actually happening. Not to mention, 160 helps you get out of pockets really easily. It's happened before, it's saved my life. It's pretty sick when it does happen. So that's the deck I'm taking to the tournament today. Let's see how it played out. So in my first match of the day, my opponent was using Impact Drake 760 low flat, Shark Edge 260 low rush, and Dran Buster 160 Cyclone, which I thought was a really cool, interesting, super aggressive setup. We're going to see how it plays out today. Round 1 does not go in my favor, unfortunately, and I start off with a pretty bad omen getting extreme finished, but we'll see how the second round goes. To kick off round 2, my Phoenix Wing versus his Impact Drake did not start off how I thought it would, with my launcher grip completely separating from my winder, destroying itself in the process, almost hitting our judge in the face. It was a rough start, but we carry on and get a new launcher grip. Properly kicking off round 2 goes in my favor, securing a nice overfinish versus his Impact Drake. Round 3 is my Wizard Rod versus his Shark Edge, and it does end up going in my favor after some aggressive hits from the Shark Edge, almost kicking me out of the stadium, but that Hexa bit doing work, keeping me in line, giving me that extra stamina that I need to close this out with an outspin. Round 4 does not go how I thought it would, but still in my favor with Phoenix Wing versus Impact Drake. Neither of us getting a good enough hit to knock the other out of the stadium, but with Impact Drake's low stamina, I secure the spin finishing. Round 5 does not go in my favor. My opponent does sneak out a pocket against my Night Mail with his Dran Buster. Round 6, we get a rematch of Wizard Rod versus Shark Edge. It goes in my favor, unfortunately. My opponent health burst pretty early. Close it out in round 7, we've got my Wizard Rod against his Dran Buster. He really needs to secure a pocket or an extreme immediately versus this combo, otherwise his luck quickly runs out, which you can see happens here. I've got that stamina to withstand his hits, and I close out the match with a 7-5 win. Round 2 begins versus Pez. Pez is very, very good. He's done really well at tournaments recently. He's running that Wizard Rod 960 low rush, Cobalt Dragoon 560 elevate, and Arrow Pegasus 160 rush, so a very meta deck. First round is my Night Mail versus his Wizard Rod on 960 low rush, a pretty unique balanced combo that he's running here. We're going to see how my Night Mail fares. Some strong early hits on both sides, but as the battle drags on and neither party is pocketed, stamina becomes the key to victory here. Surprisingly though, even though I end up on a pretty hard tilt, I am able to outspin his Wizard Rod. Next up, we've got my Phoenix Wing versus his Cobalt Dragoon. Really tough stamina matchup if it gets there, but unfortunately for me, that didn't matter because he scores a really clean early pocket on my Phoenix Wing. For the third round, we've got my Wizard Rod versus his Arrow Pegasus, and my Hexabit ends up playing much more aggressively than I'm used to due to some early hits from Arrow Pegasus, and it ends up in my favor, scoring a really nice extreme finish, putting me in the lead 4-2. For round 4, we've got my Night Mail versus his Cobalt Dragoon, and again, you'd think that this would come down to a stamina finish with that life after death, but he gets a clean pocket on my Night Mail super early.
It's now 4-4.
Round 5 becomes the Green Money Wizard Rod roundup, Hexa versus Low Rush. It does become a battle of stamina, even though Hexa plays pretty aggressively at first. Being on Hexa, I do end up taking it over the low rush 960 variant. For round 6, we're looking at my Phoenix Wing versus his Aero Pegasus, two extremely aggressive combos. Either party looking for a super clean pocket or extreme finish. Comes very close to extreme finishing me, but I'm able to bounce back off the stadium wall. We go back and forth, hitting each other super hard, but it ends up in a stamina finish in my favor. Round 7 with match point on the line, it's my Wizard Rod versus his Cobalt Dragoon. I'm really hoping that 160 Hexa bit does work here. Gives me a little bit of an aggro approach with the imbalance of 160, as well as the Hexa bit keeping me from getting knocked out like I was previously versus this Cobalt Dragoon Elevate combo. Luckily, it does not get me knocked out, but it does end up in a spin finish, which is really scary when going against Cobalt Dragoon Elevate. It does end up in my favor though, thanks to that Hexa bit's crazy stamina.
It is 7-4, Ryan's favor. Anti-Wizard Club. Let's go!
I'm 2-0 going into round 3 versus Muffin Mage, his Rock Golem 760 low rush, Drenbuster 160 Hexa, and Silver Wolf 960 Underneedle put me in a very scary position at the first part of this match. Going up against his Rock Golem first with my Nightmail, he gets a super early pocket, getting a score of 2-0 lead versus me to start off the match. Round 2 is my Phoenix Wing versus his Drownbuster. Luckily, Phoenix Wing gets a very good stall at the beginning, able to withstand some of the aggressive attacks from Drownbuster, but eventually does fall to a pocket from that Drownbuster, which is uncharacteristically late in the round, but nevertheless puts my opponent at 4-0. Putting my Wizard Rod on Hexa versus his Silver Wolf, though, I'm really hoping that this can make the difference, at least get a point for outspin, keeping my stability intact, but unfortunately, his Silver Wolf on Underneedle has a little bit more spin power than I would like, especially after taking some very aggressive rail rides, not willingly, might I add, and ending up losing too much stamina to withstand the fight versus Silver Wolf.
No, this is just an epic anime comeback. Jesus, don't call that out, no.
It's now 5-0.
Going into round 4, I'm pretty scared at the 5-0 scoreline, so I take my Wizard Rod, put it against his Drownbuster, who he's hoping gets an early knockout, and unfortunately for him, goes the opposite direction, and I get an extreme finish, putting points on the board with the score 3-5. Points on the board, I take Nightmail versus his Silver Wolf for the 5th round of this match, get a launch out, and get a really clean drop launch going here, but Silver Wolf is able to withstand it on that underneath bit. X-Rail riding, I do get pretty aggro, and fortunately it does play into my favor. Once I'm able to take his Silver Wolf and displace it from the stadium, extreme finishing it, putting me at now 6 to his 5, 1 point ahead and 1 point match win. This, I go into round 6 with Phoenix Wing versus his Rock Golem. Gonna be pretty feast or famine with this battle. I'll just let you see how it plays out.
Stamina game, stamina game, stamina game. Ryan just needs 1 point to win.
With a spin finish, I do take in round 7-5 versus Muffin Mage. Feeling pretty good right now going into round 4, a 3-0 record.
That was real, dude. Let's go.
7-5.
Now, round 4 had an interesting gimmick where my opponent, Requiem God, had 2 different decks that were concealed and asked me, along with all of his other opponents, to choose which deck he was going to match. I ended up making a pretty tough choice going against Cobalt Dragoon, 560 Elevate, Aero Pegasus 770 Rush, and Wizard Rod on 960 Wedge, which I think is a super interesting stamina combo. For round 1, I put my Nightmail versus his Cobalt Dragoon, and I'm not actually trying to do one of my drop launches here. Cobalt Dragoon will pick up that same space that I'm trying to take up. So we get into a little bit of a back and forth, bit of a tizzy as I might call it, and unfortunately these types of engagements tend to favor Cobalt Dragoon on Elevate due to the life after death that it has with its spin power. This case is going to be no different. even though he is getting some tilt on his Cobalt Dragoon, it does end up going in his favor with a spin finish versus my Knight Mail. We kick off round 2 with my Phoenix Wing versus his Aero Pegasus, and unfortunately it starts off with me getting a penalty point for a poor launch into the pocket. This is going to play into the story later, so keep that in mind, but we relaunch and I secure almost the perfect drop launch, but unfortunately his Pegasus does knock me around a bit. We X-Rail ride back and forth, end up colliding heavily, bursting him and knocking me into the pocket at the same time, with the burst happening just barely before the pocket, scoring me 2 points. Now with our Wizard Rod matchup, my 160 Hexa versus his 960 Wedge, we're going to see how this plays out. Two very passive combos in this particular 1v1, neither of which is trying to get too aggressive on the rail, so it's going to be quite a long battle. We'll see how it plays out.
Defense and stamina. Looks like Hexa is going to orbit around Wedge. Oh, Hexa goes into extreme line. Does not scrape enough. Team stamina here. Wedge trying to fight for dominant center force here.
Now I've known Wedge to be a pretty risky bit to use. I've seen it burst quite frequently in my testing, but Requiem God's able to make it work. He's found great success with this bit, also undefeated at this point in the tournament. Going back and forth, and while I am able to take that middle spot in the arena, he's just able to withstand a little bit more of the hits, has a bit more stamina, and does take a spin finish versus my Wizard Rod, putting the score at an equal 2-2. Going to round 4, 2-2, my Knight Mail versus his Aero Pegasus. I don't have good luck versus Aero Pegasus normally when using Knight Mail, so I'm pretty scared here. I try a really aggressive launch, take a pretty aggressive X-Rail ride, not really doing much damage. His Pegasus is able to pocket me, silver pretty quickly, putting him at 4 to my 2. Phoenix Wings up next versus his Wizard Rod on Wedge once again. I need to get early knockout, early damage somehow here. Fortunately, he's able to kind of avoid most of my early hits.
Big swing, big hit. Both of them recoil back. It's going to be extreme dash from Wizard Rod. Phoenix Wing taking the hits here. Looking like it's losing out stamina though with that low rush bit. Too close to the ground, too high to the sun.
He ends up getting an outspin finish versus my Phoenix Wing, putting him at 5 to my 2. Now we've got my Wizard Rod versus his Cobalt Dragoon. A little scared here because Dragoon is known to outspin Rod, but my 160 Hexa in testing makes a good difference. But unfortunately, even with a solid drop launch here, it doesn't really make a difference because he does get an almost pocket on me, almost securing the match. I am able to escape the pocket though with that 160 ratchet. Still ends up with a spin finish in Requiem's favor, but score is now 2-6. I'm pretty worried. Going into round 7, my Knight Mail versus his Wizard Rod, the unthinkable happens. I faulty launch once again, going straight into the pocket, scoring a second penalty, giving Requiem God an additional point and the match win, but he refused that point. He wanted to win fair and square without a penalty win, so we relaunch. I really appreciated that. He didn't have to do that. And away we go. With the relaunch, I get really aggressive with some early hits and recoil, which ends up knocking Wizard Rod into the extreme zone. Going into round 8 with my Phoenix Wing versus his Cobalt Dragoon, score is 5-6. I start off with an aggressive launch, getting some really crazy X-Rail dashes and some great contact and recoil with Cobalt Dragoon, really going back and forth, and then something unexpected happens.
Oh my god! Holy shit! Dude!
I'm able to get an extreme finish, winning the match 8-6. This would not be possible without Requiem God wanting to replay the match without the technicality. Don't worry, this is not the last you're going to be seeing of him in this video.
That was crazy.
We go into the last round with my score 4-0, really feeling good at this point versus Krubels. He's got Knight Mail 160 Rush, Phoenix Wing 360 point, and Silver Wolf 760 Hexa, with the first round being a Phoenix Wing face-off, my low rush versus his point. He does end up, through some recoil contact, getting a pretty good sort of reverse drop launch on me. We end up getting some good back and forth, some good X-Rail rides, narrowly avoiding an extreme finish by bouncing off the wall, but back and forth is going to favor his point bit, and he does end up securing a spin finish versus my Phoenix Wing. We get another mirror in the second round with both Knight Mails going against each other, mine on 660 versus his 160. We go a bit back and forth at the beginning, but my aggressive contact and good recoil scores me a pocket, putting the score at 2-1. Third round is going to be a stamina battle with my Wizard Rod on Hexa versus his Silver Wolf on Hexa. Do some back and forth, get some decent hits in at the beginning, but overall, it's a pretty static matchup. I'll let you just see how it goes. This is the battle that they show on Saturday morning kids cartoons. It's very safe.
Yeah, they gotta extend the runtime somehow.
Yeah.
Like, how you gonna learn by everybody's backs?
Ooh. I end up getting the spin finish versus his Silver Wolf, putting the score at 3-1. Going into round 4, got Nightmail versus Nightmail once again.
To try to avoid that shit.
We both start off with a pretty aggressive launch, some really early contact, and recoil lands his Nightmail in the pocket, but it does escape pretty much immediately. It did drain a lot of his stamina though, which I think is going to play in my favor. But as the round goes on, even though he's tilting, I start to tilt, and it ends up actually going in his favor with a spin finish for him on his Nightmail.
Oh my god!
Round 5 is my Phoenix Wing versus his Silver Wolf, and frankly, this is probably the best, most picturesque example of my drop launch really doing work against someone else. Drops right in there, ends up pocketing the Silver Wolf very cleanly on the second extreme dash. I was very pleased with this one.
I literally had to hit you there, and if I didn't, I lost.
I have him.
Going into round 6, it's my Wizard Rod versus his Phoenix Wing. I'm feeling pretty good here. Hex is pretty good at stabilizing and keeping itself from getting pocketed. I do get some pretty good hits as well on the aggressive side, but unfortunately, it does not go in my favor as the battle drags on. I lose some stamina, and he does end up getting a pretty good pocket on my Wizard Rod through some recoil.
No! I just told you!
Round 7 has a Nightmail face-off once again. We both launch pretty well, although he launches a bit more aggressively than I do, which I am scared of at first, but with some X-Rail riding and some nice contact mid-match, I end up pushing him into the extreme zone, making the final score 8-4 in my favor, going undefeated in Swiss.
Good game, man. GG.
And for top 8 in the finals, my first opponent is none other than Muffin Mage, running the same combo of Silver Wolf 960 Under Needle, Drawnbuster 160 Hexa, and Rock Golem 7 Low Rush. To kick off the finals, it's my Nightmail versus his Silver Wolf in round 1. He does not get as stable of a launch as he wants, and with my aggression pushing him out of the middle, I do score an early pocket with a 2-0 lead. Round 2 is my Phoenix Wing versus his Drawnbuster, and this one goes pretty crazy to be honest, because he hits himself into the pocket, but then launches himself out of the stadium through some recoil, which was kind of cool to see. Going to round 3 with my Wizard Rod versus his Rock Golem. I'm feeling pretty good here between Hexa and Rod being super stable, but unfortunately, Rock Golem doesn't care about statistics, doesn't care about physics, it just does what it does, and it extreme finishes me, putting the score at 4-3. Round 4 is Nightmail versus Drawnbuster. Feeling pretty good here with my defensive Bay, even if I'm on an attack combo. Drawnbuster does start off pretty slow, not really doing too much damage. I end up getting it into the pocket, putting the score at 6-3. Round 5 is my Phoenix Wing versus his Silver Wolf. I do destabilize him a little bit in the beginning, which really plays in my favor. With a couple more light taps, I go into a strong extreme finish to take the match 9-3, putting myself in top 4, still undefeated with a 6-0 record. Going to my top 4 round versus TastyRC, a really great guy who I did some testing with prior to the tournament starting. He's on Phoenix Wing 760 High Needle, Whale Wave 160 High Taper, and Shark Edge 455 Low Rush, starting with the Phoenix Wing versus my Phoenix Wing. I get a really good drop launch here, securing a strong early attack, almost pushing him into the extreme zone, but he does counter back by bouncing off the wall. We've got some good back and forth going, both of us hitting the X-Rail a little bit, but unfortunately, his High Needle does not give him the stamina he needs to take this, and I end up with a spin finish win, putting the score at 1-0. Round 2 is my Nightmail versus his Whale Wave, which is a very scary combo. It's a very heavy blade, hard to recoil with the powers that Nightmail brings to the table. I get a really strong tilt going at the beginning, which could go either way, but at this point, the battle's been dragging on for a while. I've hit him to the wall a few times. He does not have the stamina to outlast me. Nightmail does take it with another spin finish, putting the score at 2-0. Round 3 is my Wizard Rod versus his Shark Edge. He ends up bursting me, and a millisecond after I burst him. It's a very crazy round, but it does end up in his favor, equalizing the score 2-2. Round 4 is also crazy with Nightmail versus his Shark Edge once again, but this time there's no bursting. I just completely fly out of the stadium. Shark Edge is playing no games today. Round 5 is my Phoenix Wing versus his Whale Wave. I do get a very strong drop launch at the beginning, which keeps me from getting those early hits that Whale Wave can be doing the most damage with. We do some back and forth, lightly hitting each other, hitting the X-Rail more than each other, frankly, but this plays in my favor, with the High Taper not having nearly as much stamina as Low Rush. Round 6, we've got my Wizard Rod versus his Phoenix Wing. It does end up pretty interesting because I'm hoping that Hexa keeps me in the middle, keeps me stable, gives me a stamina win. But as we start circling each other, he gets himself into the pocket, pulls himself back out, but does not have the stamina to keep up. And yet it still ends up in a pocket finish, put him right back where he belonged, putting the score at 5-4. Round 7 is my Nightmail versus his Whale Wave, and I'm pretty scared at the beginning because the combination of my launch and an early hit puts me on extreme tilt. Now, we get some good back and forth going. Nightmail's gimmick with the little balls it has does help stabilize me a bit, and between that and his 160, I actually end up outspinning his Whale Wave, which is really great for me, putting the score at 6-4. Round 8 is my Phoenix Wing versus his Shark Edge. Pretty nervous here because this could be match point. I launch, really hoping to not get knocked out of the stadium again, and my wishes are granted because he ends up just bursting, because it's 455, and that's what it does. I win the top 4 match with an 8-4 score, putting me in the grand finals versus none other than Requiem God. The rematch is happening in the grand finals. I'm going against Requiem God once again, but this time he's on Rock Golem 660 level, Wizard Rod 360 low rush, and Cobalt Dragoon 560 elevate. And I gotta tell you guys, this is one of the craziest matches I've ever played. It really did not go how I thought it was going to. Round 1 was my Nightmail versus his Rock Golem, and shout out to CPR for giving some crazy commentary. I'm gonna try not to talk too much over this.
Good launch. No contact yet. Reverse extreme dash from Ryan here. Utilize. Oh! Knock it up. No, it's coming back out.
Yeah, that was insane. I came out of the pocket and ended up turning what would have been a 2-point for my opponent into 3 points for me with an extreme finish. I was not expecting that. Going to round 2 with Phoenix Wing versus his Wizard Rod on low rush.
Launch, no contact yet. Another reverse extreme dash from Ryan here. But Wizard Rod takes the center. Oh my God! Third extreme finish!
Yeah, this was crazy. That extreme finish puts the score at 6-0. It's 1-7, mind you.
Ryan is burning up the reverse extreme dash.
Round 3 is my Wizard Rod versus his Cobalt Dragoon. I know if anything's going to happen in my opponent's favor, it's probably going to be here. He's really good at launching that Cobalt Dragoon. It's kind of what he's known for. He predicts my drop launch pretty well. We both launch into that same corner of the stadium, which results in some early hits between us. It's still going to play in his favor even if I don't get knocked out because of the stamina finish, but something unexpected happens.
It's a low octane match on this one, but Wizard Rod fights back for center, sends Cobalt Dragoon into an extreme line. Wizard Rod, though, orbiting on Cobalt Dragoon's territory. Wizard Rod falling off. No, they're equalizing each other out. Cobalt Dragoon's losing stamina. No, it's going to be Wizard Rod. They're neck and neck in this stamina race here. Who is it going to be at the end? Are we looking at life after death for Wizard Rod? No, it's a draw.
Yep, that's right. Hexa ended up drawing against Cobalt Dragoon on Elevate. This is why I am running this build. It still has stamina for days.
Requiem God climbing his way back up. Bladers, are you ready? 3, 2.
We relaunch round 3 with my Rod versus his Dragoon. After some early hits, this happens.
Again, almost has it in extreme zone. No, it doesn't. Almost goes into the overzone. It does not do it. It's oh my God! Requiem God gets extreme finish 3 times in a row here. Ryan is gonna ride this high on the way home. He's gonna play the Beyblade opening on repeat.
So that's the deck I went completely undefeated with at the Top Cut bi-weekly tournament. It was so fun, and I'm really happy with the results. Let me know down in the comments below what you think of my deck, my combos, my play, any tips or tricks or other combos you want me to try or think about, or even do some research on and present the results to you. And while you're down there, hit the like if you like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already if you're looking for more Beyblade content in your feed in the near future. Stay tuned for the next tournament video where I take this same exact deck to the massive Top Cut monthly tournament, trying to make it to the grand finals once again. See if I can do it. Again, thanks so much for watching. My name is Ryan, and welcome to the club.